Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I want to take this opportunity to thank you in advance for your time and your attention that you have given to us for these last 7 or 8 days in getting you all selected. We have selected the jury that is the fairest jury to hear this case. I have an opportunity and a privilege and an honor to represent Mr. John Michael Gibson, along with myself and Attorney Careton Jr. You have been impaneled, ladies and gentlemen, to hear and listen to evidence and law in this case. The trial of John Michael Gibson, a.k.a. Cash Out. Who is John Michael Gibson? He's 34 years old. He's an American rapper. He was born in Columbus, Georgia. He moved to the Atlanta area as a teen. Came from humble beginnings. He moved to Atlanta, Georgia, living with his mother and his siblings, east side of Atlanta, and he developed a love for music. He worked hard in the development of his craft. He didn't allow his humble beginnings, he did not allow where he was born, he did not allow his circumstances to stop his dreams. What were his dreams, ladies and gentlemen? His dreams were to write music, to write lyrics, become an artist, sell records, to do concerts. Through his hard work, through his dedication, through his sacrifice, that came to fruition. He went in the studio, right here in the Atlanta area, started working, started putting his talents to work, putting his hard work and his sacrifice to effort. And that effort began to pay off. So he was 21 years old when music executive A.a. Reid invited him to New York City along with his local management to be signed. Mr. Gibson, he performed for A.a. Reid up in New York City. When he performed for them, they spent the entire day talking in a boardroom with industry executives. And they signed John Michael Gibson, Cash Out, Epic Records. When they signed Mr. Gibson, his first major song was a song by the name of Cash It Out. It was released in March.
Heck yeah, I think half the chat has to know that song.
It peaked at number 36 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was runner-up in the hip-hop department. And it topped
The hip-hop department.
as hot rap songs. Mr. Gibson toured all over the nation. Every city, every state. He was famous and still is. He was known. His songs were being played all summer long, all year long. And he did well for himself. He didn't just stop with making that one single. He made another single, released it in 2012, featuring Wale. He made another single in 2012 called Keep Twerking. These are songs that
Keep
were
Twerking.
playing everywhere.
They really were.
Single released in 2014, still working. Released an album in 2014, Let's Get It. Features with Wiz Khalifa, Ty Dolla, French Montano, Rich Homie Quan, Waka Flocka. These are not just local artists, these are national artists that Mr. Gibson was working with and worked with. These are 12 tracks. This is a full album, working. These songs aren't making themselves. Released another album in 2014 featuring Snoop Dogg, Rich the Kid, DJ Bobby Black. He worked with these artists. In November of 2014, released another album at 11 tracks. 2014, another album, It's My Time. Keisha, another one, 2015, 17 tracks. Working, honing his craft, touring, taking care of himself. This is the house that Cash built. 2015, 8 tracks. Tracks are songs. Born for This, featuring Rich Homie Quan. Released in 2016. Song called Little Baby. Released in 2016. Ran Up a Check featuring Lil Yachty. Again in 2016. Working. And the list continues to go on. 2016. 2017. 2019. 2020. Those are all songs, albums, Mr. Gibson working, taking care of his business, and building his craft. Now, we are now here in this trial. He's been charged with count 1, a Rico. There's no conspiracy here. There's no criminal enterprise. And there's no structure to any criminal organization.
Here we go again.
The evidence will show that there was no organization that resulted in structure, that resulted in there being a scheme, meetings, officers, the things that you would see in a corrupt, criminal, mafia-style organization that Rico was built for. The evidence is going to show that this goes back, in terms of this indictment, from 2013, 10, 12 plus years ago, to 21. The evidence is going to show that this was put together in a Rico case. They put this together. Now let's talk about some of these persons that you will hear from. Now, the allegation, ladies and gentlemen, is that Talicia Dewberry pimped and pandered. She was interviewed by members of the district attorney's office several years later. 6, 7 years later. 22 maybe, 2022. And you will hear her tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that it was not Mr. Gibson, that it's this girl named Raven. That I went to high school with. So I encourage you to follow along and listen to what comes out. It's not a rabbit hole. It's not distractions. It's not going to be any of that. It's going to be asking questions and getting answers. It's this girl named Raven I went to high school with. You're not going to hear that Mr. Gibson recruited her, enticed her to be pimped or pandered. Jessica McQuarrie. Keep in mind the dates. 2013, 2014. So the evidence is going to show that she was interviewed in 2022, 8 years later. You will hear that she moved to Georgia from Indiana to be with a man named James Jefferson. She did not come to Georgia to be with John Michael. You will hear that she was in communication with her mother, Christine Spurlock. And there was no pimping or pandering. No simple battery.
A few weeks for the trial, into July.
So you listen to it. Some of it may be hard to hear. Our job is not to be brutal. Our job is not to demean. Our job is to get the information. To get the information so that you can hear it. And so that you can evaluate it. Dominique Wojciechowski. Still in 2015 now. Interviewed when? 2022. You see the trend? You're going to see the trend. 2022. You're going to be asking yourself these questions. You're all being interviewed around the same time. I will ask you to follow this case. You will not find any proof that Mr. Gibson committed a sex trafficking on Dominique Wojciechowski. Frederica Spencer and Talithia White. I put them together, ladies and gentlemen, because they were together. They were together. The evidence is going to show that they were together when they came to Georgia from Alabama. You're going to hear, ladies and gentlemen, that they didn't come here because Mr. Gibson asked them to come here. You're going to hear that they came to Georgia because Deanna Sanders asked them to come to Georgia. And look at the date, August 1 to August 13. interviewed when? 2022. One in April, one in August. Now, when we get them on the stand, and when they come and sit and take this witness stand, we're going to talk. We're going to have some conversation. What did they tell the police that morning? You will hear evidence that they're going to tell the police that they were robbed by 3 men at the Delk Road Baymont Inn. But you may hear something different when they take the stand. You may hear that they may say that they were raped by a guy or 2 guys. And we're going to talk about all those things. Because you will have an opportunity to listen to the evidence. You will have an opportunity to weigh the evidence. You will have an opportunity to listen to and evaluate credibility. And you will do that. There was no pimping and there was no pandering by Mr. John Michael Gibson of Frederica Spencer and Talithia Wright. Jasmine Brown. Mr. Gibson is charged with trafficking Jasmine Brown on March 27, 2018. March 28, 18. When she comes into this courtroom and you talk to her and she talks to you and she tells you what she tells you, then we're going to compare what she tells you to what she's told other people. You'll have an opportunity to listen to the evidence. You will have an opportunity to weigh the evidence. You will have an opportunity to weigh the credibility. And you're going to learn that Jasmine Brown is her own person. She did what she wanted. You'll have an opportunity to see text messages. So we're going to go through it. When we go through it, we'll have an opportunity to listen to the evidence. You'll have an opportunity to weigh the evidence. You will have an opportunity to weigh credibility. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard a very long indictment being read. When you heard that indictment being read, there were multiple counts in the indictment. And in that indictment, which is not evidence, but it's a document that they put together, being the district attorney's office. You'll have an opportunity to listen to the evidence. You'll have an opportunity to weigh the evidence. You'll have an opportunity to weigh credibility. Count 24, they're charging Mr. Gibson with aggravated assault. They're saying that Mr. Gibson struck Ms. Brown with a belt that likely caused seriously bodily injury. Then if you just walk a few steps down the road through the path of the indictment, and you'll stumble upon the same allegation charging Mr. Gibson with the same conduct, and they chose to charge it as simple battery now. Count 30. Beating with the belt. This is their document that they charged Mr. Gibson with. You'll have an opportunity to make it make sense in their indictment.
Dara with the 5 gifted subs.
Is it either? How can it be both? Why did they put them both in there? We're going to talk about all those things. I want you to listen carefully. You will not find any belt in evidence. You will not find a picture of a belt in evidence. You will not find a description in any paperwork of a belt. Now, part of this case, they charged Mr. Gibson with keeping a place of prostitution. They're saying that on June 7th at 737 Alfred Road, that this place was a place to practice prostitution. The evidence is going to show, ladies and gentlemen, that there was a search warrant that was conducted at this address. You will not hear any evidence that in the search of this location that they found condoms, lubricants, baby oil.
Oh no.
No surveillance equipment. You're not going to hear any evidence that there were printed materials promoting illegal services. No ledgers.
Dad, this isn't
or
Diddy.
books. No controlled substances. In the search warrant, they're going to say fed them drugs. Then they charged Mr. Gibson with willful obstruction on that day in June of 2019. They're saying he refused to come out. The evidence is going to show, ladies and gentlemen, that he was in the bed. The evidence is going to show that they used some type of tear gas or some other technique or tactic, and that there was gas in the room. There will be evidence that he complied and came out. They charged him with willful obstruction. Ladies and gentlemen, they charged Mr. Gibson with possession of a firearm during commission or attempt to commit a felony on June 6, 2019 through June 7, 2019. They allege that Mr. Gibson had on him or within arm's reach a handgun during the commission of a felony against and involving the person of another. And the person of another, you will learn that it says trafficking a person for sexual servitude. But the evidence, ladies and gentlemen, will show that the only people in the residence at the time was Mr. Gibson and Miss Adams. The evidence will show that there was no person that alleged to have been trafficked was inside the residence or on the property. So the evidence is going to show, ladies and gentlemen, that a gun, but there's no alleged trafficked person in the residence. There's no alleged trafficked person on the property.
Where is happily angry lawyer?
But they find a gun, and they say, oh, it's in possession of a firearm during the commission or attempted commission of trafficking a person. The evidence is going to show otherwise on that day. Jordan Adams, ladies and gentlemen, January 11, 2019 through January 12, 2019. They are alleging, ladies and gentlemen, that Mr. Gibson trafficked by coercion, that he physically confined her and restrained her. That's count 14. And that he raped her on count 10. And that he committed aggravated sodomy, alleging that he forced her to have oral sex on him. That's what's being alleged on January 11th, January 12th, 2019. However, ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is going to point in another direction. What direction, ladies and gentlemen, is it going to point? Where is it going to lead us? ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is going to show that Jordan Adams, she was handed a folder with 6 photographs. And of those 6 photographs, ladies and gentlemen, it included a picture of Mr. Tyrone Gibson, amongst 5 others. Ladies and gentlemen, Jordan Adams picked out a totally different person that she said most like cash out. Now the allegations is that she was sexually assaulted all night long by Mr. Gibson, Mr. Taylor. But she picks out a photograph of someone totally different who is not John Michael Gibson. And on it, she writes, most like cash out. But it doesn't stop there, ladies and gentlemen. It goes farther. In her recorded interview, the day she spoke with the police, the question was asked, well, what did cash out look like? Now, ladies and gentlemen, you guys have been here for 7 or 8 days. We're all human. We all have eyes. Our eyes have vision. And you've had an opportunity to see Mr. Gibson. You all came in here, you looked at Mr. Gibson. You looked at Mr. Taylor. You looked at Ms. Smith. And you eyeballed. Because that's just human nature. So they asked the question, what did cash out look like? She said it's tall. She said maybe 6 feet. 6'2". These are her words. But it doesn't stop there, ladies and gentlemen. The evidence is going to show that it goes farther. There was DNA evidence.
Here's
You're
this
going
part.
to hear from Ashley Hinkle. She's a forensic biologist with the GBI. So there was a kit, a sexual assault kit. And this is right after. There's a sexual assault kit that was done. It was preserved. And it was ultimately sent to GBI. And then one day, ladies and gentlemen, they got a Q-tip and they asked Mr. Gibson to open his mouth, and they swabbed the inside of his jaw. And when they did that, they preserved that. And then they sent it to GBI. So now they have the kit that they got from Miss Adams. And now they have the swabbing from Mr. Gibson. And what does the GBI do?
What do you
What
think,
does the
chat?
people do? What does the forensic biologist do? They do their science. When they do their science, they offer a report. And that report comes back, ladies and gentlemen, and we have an opportunity to read the report. And the evidence, ladies and gentlemen, is going to show that John Michael Gibson,
The whole
is
name.
excluded from the data obtained from the major contributor genotype obtained from the second fraction from the vaginal vestibule swab. August 27, 2021. Mr. Gibson is charged with human trafficking and pimping of Kiara Adams for the purposes of prostitution. And
Kiara
this
Adams.
is in conjunction with a Gwinnett County case.
Kiara Adams is, we just looked over, and this is just one page, right? So maybe there's others. But she was one of the names, right? Kiara Adams. Also, these witnesses don't have any deals or benefits conferred, and state motion to grant material witness use and derivative use immunity, Kiara Adams. So I'm pretty sure that's what we're getting.
The evidence is going to show, ladies and gentlemen, that that case was dismissed at the preliminary hearing in Gwinnett County. Tyrone Taylor, July 1, 2020 through July 11, 2020. We charged Mr. Gibson with trafficking through the use of deception and coercion, pimping and pandering, keeping a place of prostitution, going back to that Alfred Road address. Now, what is the evidence going to show? The evidence is going to show that Tyrone Taylor got in her vehicle, ladies and gentlemen. She's 32 years old, and that she drove herself to Georgia from Texas in her own vehicle.
That's a long drive.
With her own money. And with her dog. And she's 32 years old. Not 18. This is not a case about minors. This is a case about adults. 32 years old, ladies and gentlemen. For 10 days, that's what they're saying, that he trafficked her. The evidence is going to show that Mr. Tyrone Gibson, John Michael Gibson, did not traffic Tyrone Taylor. And we'll get into it. You'll have an opportunity to listen to the evidence, weigh the evidence, and weigh the credibility. We've already talked about the Gwinnett County charges. Now, you may hear jail calls associated with this case. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you heard the state talk about co-conspirators. Well, I don't know if you're co-conspirators or not. That's going to be for you to determine. That's what you're here to do. That's how they are being labeled. Kiera Adams, Deanna Sanders, you will have an opportunity to listen to the evidence on them. You're going to have an opportunity to listen to the evidence on them. You will have the opportunity to weigh the credibility. You will hear that they, on this indictment, you're going to hear that they were charged. Now, you heard the state of Georgia say, well, there have been no promises made. Well, we're going to get into whether there were promises made. We're going to get into whether they made proffers, whether they made statements to the district attorney's office, who was present, what were they facing. You're going to hear all of that. You're going to have an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to determine what was their motivation in what they said. What was their interest in what they said? Was there anything, or is there anything over their head? Or do they have to come in here and talk in order for things to go smoothly with their case? You will have an opportunity to judge credibility. You will have an opportunity to determine those things that motivate people to say whatever they're going to say. And then when it's all said and done, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to ask you to weigh the evidence, listen to the evidence, judge credibility. This is a very long indictment, which is not evidence. There are a lot of witnesses. But if you stay with us, which we know you will, we'll come back later. We'll tie it all together. When we tie it all together, we're going to come back and we're going to ask you to find Mr. John Michael Gibson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews.